28:10 through 32:3. The older you get, the more you appreciate bright lights. Right? It's like, you got to see the spot here. I have spots all over my eyes. So, but this is 28 through 10, 32:3. It's Vayetze, which Vayetze. If you've been to Israel, you'll get to know this word pretty good. It basically means the exit. Okay, you see the exit signs. You'll see the three letters up there. You look for it. You know it. You start to see it because you know where the exits are. But basically, Vayetze means he went out. Okay, and it says here in the Hebrew, Vayetze Yaakov mid'er Sheva Vayilech na. Jacob departed from Beersheba and he went toward Haran. I'm going to read the rest of it here. I'm going to read this first chapter, 28:10 through the end of it. And it says, he encountered the place and spent the night there because the sun had set. He took from the stones of the place which arranged around his head and lay down in that place. And he dreamt, and behold, a ladder was set earthward, and the top reached heavenward. And behold, angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, Adonai was standing over him, and he said, I am Adonai, God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The ground upon which you are lying, to which I will give it to you and your descendants. Your offspring shall be as dust of the earth, and you shall spread out powerfully westward, eastward, northward, and southward. And all of the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and by your offspring. Behold, I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go, and I will return to you this soil, for I will not forsake you until I have done what I have spoken about you. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely Adonai is present in this place, and I did not know. And he became frightened, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and this is the gate of the heavens. Jacob arose early in the morning and took the stone that he placed around his head and set it up as a pillar. And he poured oil on its top. And he named the place Bethel. However, Luz was the city's name originally. Then Jacob took a vow, saying, if God will be with me, will guard me on this day that I am going, will give me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and I return in peace to my father's house, and Adonai will be a God to me, then this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall become a house of God, and whatever you will give me, I will repeatedly tithe to you. So, and then we get to chapter 29. If you look at this whole parashat as a whole, basically Jacob leaves Beersheba, he encounters the place, and that's what we're going to focus on today. He meets Rachel, he marries Leah and Rachel, and has children with his maidservants also. Hopefully you've read this. Children are born to him, many children. He leaves Laban, and basically it's 22 years worth of time. We'll deal with that when we get to Joseph. There's a theme here of the time that fits in when you look at it, that as he was away from his parents for 22 years, we'll see later that Joseph was also away from him later for about the same amount of time. Very interesting thing. We'll deal with that later. But that's just sort of the overview. And today, we're just going to, again, it's not Torah study, I hope you focused on that. We are just going to focus on this first part. Usually, in the past, we've talked about Rachel and Leah, their relationship, the children being born, and all of that. I want to go a little bit different direction today and talk about this first part. So we get into verse 10. It says, Jacob departed from Beersheba and went toward Haran. Now, we know Beersheba is down south in the desert. It's below Jerusalem. And so they're down south. They want to go up north. Now, this is very interesting that going off of last week's portion, we know what happened. Jacob got the blessing and stuff from his father. And then we know that Esau was upset, and so the advice was, hey, why don't you take off, let him cool down, and go. Okay? It's really an interesting part because Abraham refused Isaac to leave the land. So when we look at this first verse, Jacob departed from Beersheba and went toward Haran. Even though the promise was inside the land, it almost seems like Jacob is going backwards. And in a sense, he is. He's going backwards, but it's interesting as we look at this story that Adonai is going to use it. Okay? When we get to the conclusion, I hope this makes sense. A lot of times, sometimes we do go backwards. What we think is backwards. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes we go to a different point. But Adonai will use that situation. It says, he encountered the place and spent the night there because the sun had set. Now, in Jewish writing, it's very interesting. There's stories about like God moved made the sun set early. Like Jacob was cruising, doing his thing, and like the sun just like, God sort of orchestrated that the sun would set, so he had to stop there, okay? Back then they didn't have lights and stuff to travel, okay? So he stops there. Now what's interesting about this is he goes on to say, he took from the stones of the place which arranged around his head and lay down in that place. Now, first of all, if we look at the word hamakom, it means the place. Okay, makom is a place. And when you put the ha in front of it, for those of you in Hebrew, it's the place. It's a very specific place. The popular view, and let me say that the makom, the root of it, we sang it earlier, is kum. Kuma Adonai, kum means to arise. Okay, to rise up. It leads into resurrection. Okay, hopefully at the end of this we can fit all this together. It leads to that, but that's the root of it, is kum. And so makom is the place, it means to arise. In Genesis 22:4, Abraham, we have the same word, hamachom, used in Genesis 22:4, and that's when Abraham offered up Isaac. He was told to go to the place, which was Mount Moriah. And the popular view of this is that here he is going to be in Mount Moriah, where Abraham offered up Isaac, which would be where the future temple is, and also we know that Yeshua one day will die and be resurrected. So there's a lot going on there. Now Bethel, the thing is, he later says that it was Bethel, the house of God. And if you look at the map, Bethel is north of Jerusalem. Okay? So we have a little bit of a thing that is north of Jerusalem. But here's how it's handled in the oral writings. And let me tell you about the oral writings because people ask about that sense. We do not put them on the same level as the written Torah. But they're very beneficial to understanding different things, okay? An example would be like, what is this? It says build a sukkah. What is a sukkah? Okay? It talks about libations. But this Torah don't tell you what a libation is, okay? It's through pass down what these things are. Don't work on Shabbat. What is work? If we all go around, we could have different definitions of work. So you have these things. But there's a comment in there, and it says, the ladder stood on the temple site while its slope was over Bethel. And so we're going to talk about this ladder. This is the way that they convene this thing, is to say, you know what, because there's a big argument over, was it in Jerusalem? Was it in Mount Moriah? Was it in Bethel? Someone say it was even down in Beersheba, and he was just instantly translated there. And so I want to write this note. I got this actually from my friend. I really appreciate is Ben Burton in Midland, Texas. He's got an excellent thing called, if you really want to get into some deep stuff, called Ladder of Jacob. And he's got some notes. It's very Hebrewic, but he's got some cool stuff. So I took this. He actually had this, and it makes sense. The term Makom itself is one of God's names. And he arrived at the place. Why is God called Makom? Because he is the place of the world, and the world is not his place. Okay? And this is from Remez 1:17. Adonai is not contained or localized in the universe. The universe is contained in him. The debate about the exact location is irrelevant in this passage because Jacob in this passage has experienced something beyond time and space. So you can get really bogged down into, was it Mount Moriah? Was it Bethel, which is just a little bit north? Where was it? You're missing the point. That's what he's saying there. The point is that something is happening to Jacob here, something extraordinary that is going on here. And that's what we want to focus on, is that. Because God's not bound to a place. He is the place. Everything is confined inside of him. A note here from the Chumash, it says, in the place, B'makom Ahu. This place was Mount Moriah, the site where Abraham bound Isaac on the altar where the temple would later stand. The sages interpret the term, this is so interesting. I gotta get my, Yafid Na, which usually means encountered, to have the less common meaning prayed. So that Jacob's primary encounter was not with the geographical location, but with God. Since this verse states that this took place just before he retired for the night, the sages credit Jacob with instituting the evening prayer. It's interesting. We're going to come back to this prayer because the sages say that he was there. It was the time it says that he encountered, but they interpret that as he was praying. There was prayer involved here. Now the stones, I want to jump to the stones real quick. There's something we can learn from here. It says he took the stones, and later it says that there was a stone. He took the stones, singular. We have a plural, the stones he rearranged, and then you have a singular stone later inside the text. What is that about? He took the stones. The sages rendered that he took several stones. The stones began quarreling, each with one saying, "Upon me shall this righteous man rest his head." Thereupon God combined them all into one stone. This is why verse 18 reads, and he took the stone in the singular. The concept of quarreling stones is understood also as a moral lesson to man. For in a similar situation, human beings would surely vie for the honor of searching a great person. The sages teach that stones symbolize the nation that Jacob would soon begin to establish. There were 12 stones which coalesced into one. They represented the 12 tribes, each of them unique and with its own separate mission, but all of them united in a single nation. So this is really cool. They're saying these 12 stones were separate, but when you look at it for their purpose, they were one. And I was thinking, Shul talks about this. This is how we need to be in the body of Messiah. We're separate, we're different, we have different things, and for those who know me, this is one of the, and I've been involved in this, I'm guilty of this, but this is something that happens in communities. This is something in the Messianic community big time. And the more we are all separate stones and all do our things, there needs to be a certain time, I'm not saying everybody has to agree upon this, where we mess up, but when we come together and we worship and we do things and we can put away the little things, okay? Not worry about that, not fight over the small stuff and do all that kind of stuff. We can be the one stone. We can have purpose. We can do that. And so I think that's a good point that they make there. It's like the 12 nations. They were different. They had different purposes. But when they're united, when they're not fighting with each other, the purpose is fulfilled. And it's the same way. And we have to caution against that, of fractioning over minor things, little things, and then we just become a bunch of little bit of spokes. So, a spoke on a bike doesn't do much. When you put them all together on the wheel and they're turning, it's very nice. And so, when we come together, great things can be done. And it says here, so he raised his head, and he dreamt, and behold, there's that behold, several times it says behold, a ladder was set earthward, and its top reached heavenward, and behold, angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So we see he's at this special place, the place. He has a dream, and then we have a sulam, a ladder. that he's going to dream. And it says, behold, angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And we'll come back to that word it. It's translated as it, okay? For those in Hebrew class, you'll connect with this. But a ladder is just the simple level of this ladder. It's a connection between earth and heaven. We've probably seen pictures of this where there's a ladder going up. Some of the brooks have like a stair, we call it a round thing going up. But it's a connection from the earth to the heaven, okay? We've seen pictures of it where people are going back and forth. In Isaiah 57:15, there's an interesting scripture. Because there has to be a connection. In Isaiah 57:15, it says, for thus says the high exalted one, who lives forever, whose name is holy, I live in the high and holy place. So if you stop right there, he says, I live in the high and holy place. He lives there. But then he goes, but also with the broken and humble, in order to revive the spirit of the humble and revive the hearts of the broken ones. So we see here Adonai lives in the high and exalted place. But also, he lives here. It says, those with the broken and humble spirits. There's a connection between the heaven and the earth. And so you see that going on in the heaven and the earth. There's got to be some kind of a connection. This is where that ladder comes in. Ladder is sulam in Hebrew. I'm going to read a note here because this is a very interesting note. Mount Sinai. The ladder alludes to Sinai since the words Sinai and Sulam both have the numerical value of 130. If you don't know, Hebrew language each letter has a numerical value. You take those letters and you add them together with the numerical value, they both come out to 130. The angels represent Moses and Aaron, and God stood atop the ladder just as he stood atop Sinai to give the Torah. Accordingly, the Torah given at Sinai and taught by sages such as Moses and Aaron is the bridge from heaven to earth. So they're connecting it with Sinai, that since it has the same value, that there was a bridge on Mount Sinai between heaven and earth. Hashem comes down, he meets with them, he gives them the stuff, and there's this bridge at the time, which is Moshe and Aaron. Now this is important because the Torah sets up that there would be an intermediate person between people and God. A lot of times we say, I just go straight to him. And though this is one of the things that's sometimes used in anti-mission is we don't need anybody to go to God, we can just go straight to him. So you don't need Yeshua, you don't need anybody. No, Torah has set it up. Moses was that person. Aaron was that person. Because it's an example. You just didn't go, they went to that. And so you have this whole thing. So it says in Tukuni number 43, a ladder stood on the earth and the top of it reached to heaven. This is prayer. So if you look at the Jewish things that say this is prayer. This ladder, one of the representations is prayer. Prayer is a way to reach from heaven to our earth to heaven. There's an interesting question that comes up though. Since angels have wings, in Isaiah 6, Ezekiel 1, okay, there's different scriptures that show this, and the ability to fly, why would they need a ladder? Yeah, it's a good question, right? Why do they have to do this, okay? Heaven and earth are intertwined. As in the phase, as above, so below, or on earth as it is in heaven, as we say in the prayer. But how is this possible? How is it possible that infinite light can connect with finite matter? There must be a bridge, a ladder, a conduit through which all prayers ascend. On Mount Sinai, Adonai tore apart firmaments and descended upon the mountain. At that moment, heaven and earth were connected. Incredibly, the gematria, that's the numerical value of the word Sinai, is eloquent to Salam. Mount Sinai and the ladder of Jacob are intimately related. That's number one. Okay, so Mount Sinai. We get that from a Torah perspective. But it goes much deeper. I'm glad it don't end there. We're going to go deeper into it. There's another connection to it. The rabbis related it to Sinai. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder symbolized Sinai, set upon the earth, as it says, and they stood at the nether part of the mount, Exodus 19:17, and the top of it reached to heaven. And the mountain burned with fire until the heart of heaven, Deuteronomy 4:11. And behold, the angels of God allude to Moses and Aaron, descending, and Moses went up to God, Exodus 19:3, and descended, and Moses went down from the mount, and behold, the Lord stood beside him, and the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai. This is where it really focuses in the Jewish world, going back to Mount Sinai. It focuses on that. And Moses and Aaron are servants, and so they're referred to in that way. But to an English speaker, in our English language, the text of Genesis is clear. The angels were ascending and descending upon the ladder, not Jacob. In Hebrew, however, the situation is more complex. The passage says that the angels were ascending and descending. The word is bo. The word bo here literally means on him. Yep. This is not the bo that means come or go. Okay, this is just like our word son and son. There's a son, the son, there's a son, your physical son. There's the word bo. So if you look at if you look in the Hebrew, you'll see that it says at the end of the thing there, it says bo. This is one of the words that doesn't have a feminine or a masculine identity. So it can be used as is it or him. So there's a big controversy whether the angels are descending on the ladder or they're descending on him, Jacob himself. Okay? Now we're going to leave it at that for a second because this is going to lead into another story here. It says, later it says, and behold, Adonai stood above it. Because Adonai says he himself is standing at the top of the ladder. When he awoke, this is no other than the house of Elohim, and this is the gate of heaven. So we see this in our text here when he says that, in verse 16, Jacob woke from his sleep and said, surely Adonai is present in this place, and I did not know. And he became frightened and said, how awesome is this place? This is no other than the abode of God, and this is the gate of the heavens. So something awesome was happening here. In Psalm 118, verse 19, of course it says, open the gates of righteousness for me, and I will enter them and thank Yah. This is the gate of Adonai. The righteous can enter it. I am thanking you because you answered me. You become my salvation. We see here, we know that Psalm 118 is talking about the Messiah. When we get to the end of it, it's very, very obvious. He's talking about the Messiah that Adonai is going to save. He himself is going to save. But he talks about opening the gates. And he talks about this is the gate of Adonai. The righteous can enter into it. So it's not something new. We can talk about Yeshua, that there's just a one way in. It's been like that through Torah to the Tanakh. God has a gate. God has a way. God has a plan. He's always been. He is the salvation. And he's always had his plan. The gates of righteousness, gate of Hashem, gate of heaven, whatever, they are one. They're used in different texts, different things, but they are one. So let's go to some scriptures now in the Gospel of John. In John 1, verse 43. And ladder is not a common thing in the Torah. It's a very unique thing. We see Yeshua here, though, brings us up. The next day, having decided to leave for the Galilee, Yeshua found Philip and said, follow me. Philip was from Bethsaida, the town where Andrew and Kepha lived. Philip found Nathanael and told him, we found the one that Moshe wrote about in the Torah and the prophets. It's Yeshua ben Yosef from Nazareth. Nathanael answered him, Nazareth, can anything good come from there? Come and see, Philip said to him. Yeshua said, Nathanael coming toward him and remarked about him, here's a true son of Israel, nothing false in him. Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Yeshua answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered, "Teacher, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Yeshua answered, "You believe all this just because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than that." Then he said to him, "Yes, indeed, I tell you that you will see heaven open and the angels of God going up and coming down on the Son of Man." Now, a couple points here. This is my personal opinion that I started thinking. I always wonder if Nathanael wasn't reading this portion at the time. Jacob doesn't mean deceitful. Okay, it doesn't mean deceitful. A lot of translations say it means heel. Okay, he catches the heel. Okay, but he had an issue with his father and sort of misled him on that, and there was deceit there. We'll see later he reaps what he sows, because Laban, if you read the story, does the same thing to Jacob. You reap what you sow. And he tells Nathanael here, nothing false in him. And I just wonder if he wasn't reading that. It's just my thing. But something really affects him. And Yeshua tells him the angels of God are going up and descending on the Son of Man. And Yeshua could make this claim because, going back to what we said in the text, bo can mean on the ladder or on him. So you can't just say, well, Yeshua was going out of bounds here. It was referring to the ladder. No, it could be referring to Jacob on him, which would be later a signal leading to Messiah himself, the Son of Man. It was pointing to him. The angels will be messing with him. We go to the chapter, so Yeshua does connect that thing. They're going to respond to him. If we go to chapter 6, verse 38 in John. We're going to stay in John, all these scriptures. He says, "For I have come down from heaven to do not my where am I at? For I have come down from heaven to do not my own will, but the will of one who sent me." We see here Yeshua says he is descending. He's coming down from heaven to do his Father's will. If we go to chapter 10, verse 9. Yeshua says, "I am the gate. If someone enters through me, he will be safe and will go in and out and find pasture." So Yeshua here says, "I am the gate." We read in Psalms, we read that's the ladder, there's a gate. He says, "I am the gate." And then we go to chapter 20, verse 17. And Yeshua, this is after his resurrection, he says, "Stop holding on to me," Yeshua said to her, "because I haven't yet gone back to the Father, but go to my brothers and tell them that I am going back to my Father and to your Father, to my God and your God." He's ascending now. He's descended, now he's going back, ascending. Yeshua reveals the secret of the word bo. It is him. It is himself. Yeshua is the gate, the conduit, the ladder, the connection between heaven and earth. Reveals that. We cannot forget that. That we sang at Mashiach ben David. He is the reason we sing. Torah leads us to understand who Messiah is, that we need Messiah. It's progressive revelation in the sense that it's identifying who he is and doing all of that. Let us not turn our back or go back. And I say this as a caution because many people want to get wrapped up into these things and give up Messiah. You're going backwards. Really backwards. The point is to know Messiah. There's a question that was asked. If two people are on a ladder, one at the top and one on the bottom, who is higher? This is presented to a class, okay? The class thought it was a pretty dumb question until the wise teacher explained that they were not really capable of judging who was higher or lower until they first ascertained in which direction each was headed. In our world, when we think of a righteous person, a tzaddik, sometimes we translate it in English as saint, okay? We think of a spiritual superhero of sorts who never makes any mistakes. Then we contrast this with our own lives, which are seemingly riddled with failures and sin. Incredibly, the Bible defines a righteous person, a tzaddik, as the nearly exact opposite of what modern society would have us to believe. This is why we have troubles. I think in the Brit Hadashah, it says Lot was a righteous man. We have trouble with that. We have trouble with things. That one was a righteous man. And we try to figure these things out. We're going to go to Proverbs chapter 24:16. This is all connected to the ladder. Which way are we going? Which way am I going? Which way are you going? It's a fantastic question. I'll start verse 15. Don't lurk like an outlaw near the home of the righteous. Don't raid the place where he lives. Let's speak about the righteous. For though he falls 7 times, he will get up again. It is the wicked who fell under stress. I want to read that. The righteous person, for though he falls 7 times, he will get up again. The righteous one, the tzaddik, falls 7 times and gets up. The definition of a righteous person, the tzaddik, is not someone who never makes a mistake, but rather someone who, although he may fall down, does not give up. We say this in the patriarchs. Instead of trying to make them perfect, as sometimes some of our texts do. Okay, if you read the Chumash, I love it, but they did no wrong, and there's an excuse for everything. Abraham messed up. Abraham had his fault. We see with Jacob here. Jacob had his faults. You can splice it, dice it, all of that. However, they have a good explanation in Hebrew. He really didn't lie to his father. He deceived his father. He misled him. Jacob, but the difference is, and then Peter. Let's look at Peter. Peter was always putting his foot in his mouth. He denied the Lord. He denied him. But we see he becomes the one in the book of Acts. I mean, he becomes the in a sense, a leader of that. He writes books. Why? What is the difference here? What was the difference between Jacob and Esau? We talked about this a little bit last week. Esau didn't care about spiritual things. It was about here and now. Jacob looked towards the future. He cared about the future. He cared about it. He looked towards God. Did he make mistakes? Yes. And this is what we want to point out. All of these men throughout the Bible, a lot of times they made mistakes while they were serving God. And sometimes we fall down. We think we're even doing the right thing. We're this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. And we're trying to serve God, and we still end up falling. According to Proverbs, a righteous man, that's what the difference is. Some people fall and they just stay in that fallen state. A righteous person will say, I'm getting back up, and I'm grabbing that next that thing on the ladder, and I'm continuing to go up. I'm going to continue to press on. And our merciful Lord allows us to do this. And this is why we have so many examples in the whole of Scripture of people that have messed up, have failed. David's a great example. All kinds of examples from our patriarchs. They got back up and they served God. And we have to be merciful to each other. We have to encourage each other to stay on that ladder, grab that next ring. You might have come down, you might have been here, but get back up, get on that ladder, and do it. And that ladder is Yeshua. Being connected to Yeshua. In Jacob's dream, Adonai shows him a vision of a ladder reaching toward heaven. Spiritual growth is 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We will have setbacks. What is important is that we are heading in the right direction. And this actually comes from h.com. Don't misinterpret me. I'm not saying we can go out and sin, just purposely sin and say, forgive me, God, and do that. The first book of John is very clear on that. If sin is habitual in our lives, if we continue to have a continue to sin purposely, then we do not know him. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the life that we live here on earth, as we're walking with God, as we're trying to draw closer to Him, we will have setbacks. We will do things that will say, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why did I make that decision? I thought I was right. I argued about this person about this or that, and I was doing it because I was right about the Bible. And then you find out, it wasn't so right. Yeah. That's okay. Get it right, pick it up, and keep moving on. This is what Proverbs tells us. This is what the ladder is about. And God has given us Yeshua. He is the ladder. He is the gate. He is everything. And we need to never forget that. It's focusing on Him. Everything leads to that. All right, I'm going to do something a little different today. See, I'm trying to change myself too, okay? For those who know, I am a sit-down person. I like to sit down and talk Torah for hours, go back and forth, how about this, how about that? It's hard being up here for me. I've had to readjust my whole thinking of doing that because I like to talk back, but it doesn't work on a Shabbat. And I actually thought this ladder would take me farther into the day. But hopefully that makes sense. And I think I want you to concentrate on that ladder. Concentrate on growing closer to Messiah. He is the only way. We have so many voices out there, even in the Messianic world now. Whatever you want to call it, Messianic, Hebrew. I hate putting terminologies. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. But pushing away sometimes from Messiah. Pushing away to a different thing. Pushing away to this or that. He is the one that we have to draw to. We cannot push away from that. We cannot do that. It's very simple. Yeshua is the ladder, so we have to make a big decision sometimes. Do I jump all in with Him? If He is the only way on that, I have to jump in. If He's not, then we're in trouble anyway. And so grab a hold of Him and do that on that. Just a few side notes. After Jacob does this, it says in chapter 29, so Jacob lifted his feet and went toward the land of the Easterners. He looked, and behold, a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lay there beside it. From there they would water the flocks, and stone over the mouth of the well with large. When all the flocks would be assembled, they would roll a stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep. Then they would put back the stone over the mouth of the well in its place. And Jacob said to them, my brothers, where are you from? And they said, we are from Haran. He said, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, we know. And he said to him, it is well with him. They answered, it is well. And see, his daughter Rachel is coming with the flock. And so we know the story here. He loves Rachel. He wants to marry her. Laban is sort of disappointed that he don't come. Remember when Eliezer came, he had all kinds of gifts. Jacob comes empty-handed. And so the way that Laban is treated, which teaches us, how do we approach people sometimes? How do we, a lot of times we hang out with someone, we like someone, if they've got stuff, and then what happens when their circumstances change? What if they come around and they don't have anything? Are we less to, we don't need to hang out this week? Does our attitude change? And so we have to be careful of not being like Laban, okay? Being fake. He loved Eliezer coming and then that. Let us not pick people, not things, just because they have gifts, because they have stuff. So we know the story of Rachel and all of this. Well, we read that. It's a very interesting thing. Again, this is Jacob's life. He gets deceived here because he thought he was going to marry Rachel. He ends up marrying Leah. We know the story. If you don't know, this is one of the traditions in a Jewish wedding, is the way you unveil. It's a little bit different in our culture. You unveil before the wedding. So you lift up the thing to make sure this is the one I'm supposed to marry. There's a whole thing to that. So if you see, you go up, you lift it up, make sure, okay, that's her, you put it back. Okay, it's good. Yeah. We have a danger in that. But what we see with Jacob's life, though, even though he's following God, he has this great thing with God, it really gets messed up. He's going to stay. He stayed longer than he should have. Okay? We'll do this here when we get to Joseph. He stays longer than he should have. Part of it is he was deceived, and he has to stay another 7 years. But then he sticks around longer because he's getting stuff. And eventually, and that'll be next week's portion. This will be talking about things next week on that. But then he heads back. There's a time to go back. But we see he's got a mess on his hands. Okay, he's got 4 different wives. There's a lot of quarreling between it. Okay, a lot of things, and we see all that. But we're going to see that he has another experience in the next parasha with God also. As long as we're on that ladder and we're walking towards God, I just want to say again, there's going to be things that set us back. There's going to be things that we do. The important thing is God keeps reaching. Be open to that. Be open. Get back up. One of the things about assembling together, a lot of people will not want to assemble. I've been there before. I don't want to go. I messed up, and I don't want to go because I don't want to be judged in the wrong way. I don't want to go. That's the time you need to go. That's the time to assemble. When you don't feel like this, go. And get things right. Get back on that ladder. Don't run and hide. Continue moving forward. And we see here again the miracle that Rachel was barren. There's a reason for that. But they end up reconciling too. I think we're just going to... Laban tries to keep him around. That was just one point I wanted to bring out here. It's interesting that even the daughters got it. Let's go to the last chapter 31, verse 48. And it says, and Laban declared, the mount is a witness between me and you today. Therefore he called his name Galid, and is for Mizpah, because he said, may Adonai keep watch between me and you when we are out of each other's sight. If you will ill-treat my daughters, and if you marry wives in addition to my daughters, though no man may be among us, but see, God is witness between me and you. And Laban said to Jacob, here is this mound, and here is the monument which I have cast between me and you. This man shall be a witness, and the monument shall be a witness. They may not cross over to you past this mound, nor may you cross over to me past this mound and the monument for evil. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor judge between us, and God of their father. And Jacob swore by the dread of his father Isaac. Then Jacob slaughtered for a feast on the mountain and summoned his kinsmen to break bread, and they broke bread and spent the night on the mountain. And Laban awoke early in the morning. He kissed his sons and daughters and blessed them. And then Laban went and returned to his place. Jacob went on his way, and angels of God encountered him. Jacob said when he saw them, this is a godly camp, so he called the name Mahanaim. Just the last exchange here is interesting because Laban calls on the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor. He brings other gods, false gods, no gods, into it. But it's interesting, if you really want to look into this, that Jacob just swears by the dread of his father Isaac. He doesn't even mention Abraham, because my opinion is that Laban is associating that with the past also. So he brings up Isaac, because Isaac was very clear. Isaac just knew the God of Abraham. That was it. What it shows us me, though, when I look at this, he says, then they broke bread together and they had peace. There are people who have different things, who do different things. Our goal should be, we don't have to give in, we don't have to do that, but we can have peace. You know? We have made peace here with things that a lot of us object to. Okay? With the different holidays. But just as Isaac, it doesn't bother him. Okay, that's where you're at. This is where I'm at. Let's break bread and agree upon this and have peace. So we can learn from that. We can do that. I think you see that through many parts of Scripture. The ideal part is to have peace. Even when we have disagreements, we have that. The ultimate goal should be to come to a place of peace on that. So I'm going to stop there. Can you believe that? Because I just want the emphasis to be on that ladder. I really encourage, I think we need to encourage people. You know, we're going to do a song here, a new song here in a second. And then after that, we'll have the kiddish out there. The church is doing something. I was talking to the pastor. He's in Pakistan right now, but the church is going to be doing something at the end of the year. So you'll see sort of I guess you'll call it a mess up here for months. They are actually going to take these index cards, I think the first or last Sunday in December, and they're going to write like 5 names of people, each person, and then they fill this place up, 2 services, of people that they're praying for, people that are lost, people that have walked away, and they're going to put their names on a piece of card, and they're going to put them up here at the altar. And the idea is that you're supposed to be praying for those people. You're supposed to be doing that. And then he said what's going to happen throughout the year as those people come back to God, as they're restored, as they're doing that, by faith, they're going to you have to come up and find that card, and you're going to put it on the steps here. So we're going to see a bunch of cards on the steps at some point, okay? We'll have to stay away from the steps and up here, okay? But the idea is that hopefully the stage gets more clear, the altar, and the steps get more. He says, because it's so interesting, we're talking about the ladder this week, because what he was talking about, he didn't know where to on it, is that the steps, they begin their steps with God. They're beginning their journey with God. So we're moving them from the altar to that. I'm not asking you to put a card up here. What I'm asking is that just as God himself is all about restoring mankind, he's shown this great ladder to Jacob. He wanted to show him the way it was. I didn't go back to that. I didn't write it all and stuff, but I want to go back to that one part. We said prayer. In the Jewish world, they said that this ladder is prayer. Prayer is a bridge between what we have here on earth and to the heavens. We are praying to the righteous judge, the high priest. Do we really believe that Yeshua's, I don't know what the heavens are. Is he there? He's the high priest. It is that bridge. There was a story, I didn't write it down, in the Jewish world, which they talk about this rabbi they were intentionally praying, and one guy was really slow at praying, and everybody else got sort of bored, so they sort of left. And then they asked him what he was praying, and he says that the Mashiach this is a story, but the Mashiach would be coming back. And the guy actually said he went up like to that, he was almost at the Mashiach to have him come back, but then the prayer stopped. And the point of the story is, don't stop praying. Prayer can be that ladder. It can be that thing that I honestly say, I am here because of prayer. Okay? Of a praying spouse. And prayer is what we shouldn't give up. So I like their card thing. Well, for us, it's continue to pray. Pray for people. Let that prayer be on that ladder. Let that go to the high priest. Let that go to him. And then, when people are being restored, part of it is to rebuild. When people come in, and I really hope this year that some of those who have walked away from the faith, some of those who haven't been saved before, would come and give their hearts and give their lives to the Lord. And then they get on that ladder and they move forward. Let us be gracious to those who have come down the ladder a little bit, but decided, I'm going back up. I'm going to yes, I fell down, but I'm going back up. Let us be an encouragement to that as a community. Not to tear each other down, but to lift each other up. And so I'll stop there. We have a new song called Hallelujah. Is that right? Hallelujah. By Joshua Aaron. We're going to go out with some joy. And then afterwards, man, please say